WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming up, the Open Eye. Hey, Sherry. All right. I'm kind of on time today. How you like that? Hey, good morning, sister. Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego digging. We do so because the chains of oppression on people's minds are difficult to remove. Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist Patrice Gibbs, here to get that third eye open. Yes, indeed, I got plenty for you today. I sure do. All right. As we always say, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. Let me get my disclaimer out the way right quick. Okay. All right. The views and opinions expressed on the Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual. All right. Moving right along. Yes. We are children of the sun. Not metaphorically, not casually, but cosmically. Woven from the same radiant energy that birthed galaxies. Burnt in God's own furnace. Forged in the divine heat where creation itself was tempered. We are the descendants of the first people who walked the earth. The original stewards of light. The first faces to greet the dawn. Our blackness is no accident. It is protection, it is science, it's spirit, it's inheritance. Our melanin is a shield crafted by the universe itself, an armor forged in ancestral fire. That's right. Designed to hold the sun, absorb it, convert it, and shine it back as brilliance. People will talk about black don't crack, but they forget the reason. We were sculpted to withstand the very star that gives life to this planet. Our skin is history. Our skin is technology. Our skin is a living testament to survival, adaptation, and divine intention. We're protected from his fiery rays by our blackness. That's not just poetic. It's biological, ancestral, and the spiritual truth. Melanin is the original crown, the first armor, the great equalizer that allowed us to walk under the scorching heavens with dignity and strength. We are not cursed, we are chosen. We are not inferior, we are engineered. We are not accidental, we are intentional. Our blackness is a blessing and an honor. A sacred inheritance passed through generations across deserts, kingdoms, storms, and revolutions. It is the signature of a people who have endured every force meant to erase them and still rise radiant. It is a badge bestowed by the universe itself, saying, you were made to withstand the heat. And that is why no oppression, no hatred, no erasure can dim us. We come from the sun. We carry the sun. We are the sun. Walk like you are lit from within, because you are. WHGE 95.3 FM, open high. Hey, Frankie. See you there, brother. Thank you. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. Let me tell y'all about the African who taught the world to fly. Yeah. You know what? Let me take you on a journey they never wanted you to know. Imagine flying in the 800s. Now, imagine the world burying the African who did it. Yes, I said the 800s. And that's exactly what they did. They tried to bury him. His name was Abbas ibn Firnas, the African scientist they tried to erase. Born in 810, Common Era, CE or AD, whichever you prefer. Abbas ibn Firnas wasn't Arab. He wasn't European. He was a black African, an Amazigh Berber, a child of North Africa's ancient scientific tradition. Spain at that time wasn't the Europe they teach in textbooks. It was a territory ruled and elevated by African and Afro-Arab leadership. And like so many melanated geniuses, the world loved his invention, but erased his identity. They kept the story, but they buried the African. How you like that? Classic playboy. His origins were African science, not European myth. Ibn Firnas didn't come from a backward world. He came from a civilizational continuum. Kemet, Nubia, Ethiopia, Morocco, Mali, Songhai, the Maghreb, cultures that had been calculating the stars while Europe was still trying to remember how to bathe. Africans built clocks. Africans mapped the heavens. Africans engineered tools. Africans advanced medicine, math, architecture, and navigation. Europe learned from Africa, not the other way around. And Ibn Firnas, he was a millennium ahead. This brother mastered scientific principles Europe wouldn't fully grasp for nearly 1,000 years. Aerodynamics, wind curvature analysis, lift, drag, wind resistance, mechanical engineering, optics, lens making, astronomical instruments. He wasn't playing. He wasn't guessing. He was calculating. He was applying laws of physics that wouldn't be formally recognized until the 1800s. But they don't tell you that in school because it shatters the lie that black people enter history as slaves. The first recorded human flight was African. Cordoba, Spain, a city with libraries, universities, streetlights, centuries before London or Paris caught up. And Ibn Firnas, he built a glider from a lightweight wooden frame, silk, eagle feathers, a curved aerodynamic shell modeled on birds. Then in front of a crowd on a cliff overlooking the city, he jumped. He glided. He didn't fall. He didn't tumble. He controlled the flight for several long seconds, long enough to silence the crowd, long enough to rewrite human possibility. This was the world's first recorded attempt at controlled human flight. Not Leonardo da Vinci, not the Wright brothers, a black African man, Abbas ibn Firnas. Why did they hire him? Because African genius challenges the entire architecture of white supremacy. Because if African people were mastering physics while Europe was still living in huts, then the whole inferiority myth collapses. Ibn Firnas proved something they never wanted us to believe. Black people weren't just on the ground. We were the first to rise in the air. Say his name. Abbas ibn Firnas. African scientist, engineer, poet, astronomer, inventor. The first human to challenge gravity with knowledge. So when they tell you Africa contributed nothing, when they tell you we were late to science, when they say history didn't begin until Europeans wrote it, tell them Africa flew first. Because before Europe crawled, Africa soared. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, Steve, good morning. Yes, Steve. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Hey, I still see people doing this. Nah, man, I wasn't down with Martin, I was with Malcolm. As if you could actually separate the two. Stop pitting Malcolm against Dr. King. Because every time someone says Malcolm was too extreme or King was too passive, what they're really doing is repeating a lie that was manufactured by the very system both these brothers were fighting. Let's get something straight. Malcolm and Martin were not opposites. They were a progression. Two sides of the same liberation struggle. Two strategies aimed at the same enemy: white supremacy, racial capitalism, and state violence. See, the government needed you to think Malcolm and Martin were rivals. COINTELPRO literally wrote memos about driving wedges between black leaders. They fear one thing above all else: black unity with black strategic diversity. Why? Because when you have a movement with Malcolm's uncompromising clarity and King's mass organizing power, that's unstoppable. That's a revolution. And tell you something. Malcolm wasn't violent. King wasn't soft. The caricatures they feed us are lies. Malcolm X didn't preach violence. He preached self-defense, dignity, political education, internationalism, and anti-imperialism. And Dr. King wasn't weak. He marched in police batons, dogs, jails, and bombs, knowing damn well he could get killed any day. That's not passivity. That's courage on a monumental scale. King was radical enough to be assassinated the moment he turned his fire on capitalism, militarism, and poverty. Malcolm was radical enough to be assassinated the moment he started building global black unity and exposing U.S. hypocrisy to the world. These men didn't die because they disagreed. They died because they were effective. The truth is they were moving towards each other. By 1964-65, Malcolm and Martin weren't drifting apart. They were converging. Malcolm was reaching out to work with King's movement. King was becoming more militant in his critique of America. Both were realizing that civil rights inside the U.S. was inseparable from human rights across the world. They were on a path towards collaboration. And that is exactly when they were taken from us. The divide helps the oppressor, not us. White America uses Malcolm versus Martin narrative like remote control. You want to shame black protests? They quote the sanitized king they invented. You want to demonize black resistance? They misquote Malcolm. You want to weaken black unity? They make you choose between two men who never asked to be weaponized against each other. This isn't education, it's manipulation. The real message? Stop choosing between Malcolm and Martin, because our liberation was never an either or. It was always both and. See, we needed Malcolm's fire and King's strategy. Malcolm's global vision and King's national coalition. We needed Malcolm's insistence on black dignity and King's demand for systemic justice. We needed every tool, every tactic, every truth. And the final word, the system fears a Malcolm with a king with a Malcolm, a movement that understands self-defense and nonviolent disruption, policy and protest, local organizing and international pressure. And when you pit them against each other, you're not revealing your political philosophy. You're repeating the propaganda of the state that killed them both. Let's honor them the right way by continuing to fight with all the strategies they taught us, by understanding the fullness of their evolution, and by standing in the unity they never got to complete. Stove and I. Hey, Rhonda, I see you there. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. Dove and I. You know, it's something with what's going on with the political climate. You hear the calls and valid accusations of fascism. And you wonder, well, where was the example? Where was the blueprint? All right, let me break that down for you. On June 5th, 1934, less than 2 years after Adolf Hitler took the reins of the Reich, the most powerful lawyers of Nazi Germany sat down at a polished table to design the legal architecture of white supremacy, the Nuremberg laws. And here's the part America never teaches. Never teaches. A stenographer was in the room. Every word captured, ink on paper, no mentions, never whispers, in its land of the free mythology. Okay? No speculation, receipts. Brilliant. Receipts filed away in an archive most Americans will never read because this nation is allergic to its own reflection. And what did the Nazi legal brain trust begin their meeting with? A detailed memorandum on the race laws of the United States of America. Let that sink in like a stone dropped into a still pond. The architects of the Holocaust studied Jim Crow. They study anti-miscegenation laws. They study one-drop racial classifications. They study segregation statutes, indigenous removal policies, and citizenship exclusions. They examined America, this shining city upon the hill, and said, yes, this is the model. This isn't conspiracy. This isn't exaggeration. This is historical fact. Nazis didn't invent racial hierarchy. They refined what America had already perfected. They looked at how the United States stripped native people of land and legal personhood. They looked at how America defined black people as subhuman under law. They looked at how Chinese immigrants were banned from citizenship by statute. And they said, we can use this. America wasn't repulsed by Nazi racism. America was the blueprint. But here's the part that really burns. Some Nazi lawyers thought American laws were too extreme. Let me repeat that. Some of Hitler's men, said U.S. racial laws went too damn far. The Nazis. When the Nazis think you're doing too much, your soul is lost somewhere in the basement of hell. And today's America, still wrestling with voter suppression straight out of the Jim Crow textbook. Still criminalizing black bodies with laws that echo slave patrols and black codes. Still pushing replacement theory, propaganda that could have been pulled straight from Goebbels' files. Still banning books to protect white innocence instead of confronting white guilt. This is why history matters. This is why memory matters. Because fascism didn't fall out of the sky. It follows the road maps left behind. America likes to pretend it's the global moral compass, pointing the world toward freedom. Yeah, right. The truth is much darker. When the Nazis prepared to strip Jews of citizenship, outlaw interracial marriage, and define who was human and who was not, they didn't look to ancient Rome or Prussia or medieval Europe. They looked right here in America. So the question is not whether America could fall into into fascism. The question is whether America ever fully climbed out. It's Dope and I. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs, right here on Open Eye. All right. You know, it's something what people will do to get attention, to promote their hatred, to try to demonize. And every time you think the MAGA circus has folded its tent and gone home, here they come building a whole new big top, flying in more clowns and setting the elephants loose in the parking lot. The recent feature act, 26-year-old MAGA law student who allegedly staged her own violent kidnapping, hired a professional to carve her up like a pumpkin and blamed it all on anti-Trump critics. Let me say that again. She paid somebody to wound her so she could pretend she was a victim of the radical left. So what we have is we have officially entered the do-it-yourself martyrdom era of MAGA. This wasn't just a lie. It was a full production hoax. Zip tie she allegedly bought herself. Scripted wounds. A friend calling 911 reporting mass gunmen. Slurs written across her body like a bad political billboard. They wrote Trump whore on her stomach. Van Drew is racist on her back. All staged. All staged. This is MAGA performance art gone delusional. And you know what's wild? These people spend every day screaming, Jussie Smollett, Jussie Smollett, like it's a ritual chant. And then they go out and to try and out-Smollett Smollett. They don't just take the cake, they steal the bakery, burn it down, and blame it on Antifa. And let's be clear. This was not about danger. This was about attention, about victimhood cosplay, about feeding a political cult that survives on delusions and persecution fantasies. Because in the MAGA universe, nobody wants to do the hard work of being decent. They just want the shortcut of being a victim. They want sympathy without sacrifice, spotlight without struggle, and credibility without facts. And now, oh yeah, she's facing up to 10 years in prison and $500,000 in fines because MAGA loyalty demands theater, not truth. You don't need law school to understand the real reason here. When your politics become your personality, your morality goes missing. When your identity is built on conspiracy theories, you start living in them. And when you worship a man who thrives on lies, chaos, and alternate facts, eventually you start manufacturing your own reality. This isn't just sad, it's dangerous. To waste law enforcement time, resources, and public trust. To mock real victims who survive real violence. And it exposes the rot, consuming a movement that calls itself patriotic while drowning in self-inflicted delusion. Natalie Green doesn't need applause. She needs accountability. And she needs help. Professional, deep issue, long-term help. Because no political ideology should push someone to harm themselves for clout. And to the MAGA politicians issuing soft, sanitized statements, go to hell. If you're shocked, you haven't been paying attention. This is the ecosystem you built, where lies are rewarded, truth is optional, and martyrdom is the highest currency. On this show, on Open Eye, we deal in reality, not role play. And the reality is simple. When the truth is no longer enough, people start inventing danger to feel important. When the facts don't fit the narrative, they manufacture the crime. And when a political movement demands loyalty over sanity, humanity gets lost in the woods, zip-tied, blindfolded, and screaming for a rescue that never needed to happen. It's the Open Eye. Patrice Gibbs here, your third eye optometrist. Yeah, I recently told you about the nurse leaving the sister to suffer. Sister is in labor. Another one. Well, let me tell you, I got a continuation here. let's talk about something America has spent centuries running from. A truth soaked in blood and denial. There is a long, unbroken tradition in this country of killing black babies. Physically, medically, legally, and socially. And the trail goes all the way back to slavery. Let's be clear. Let's be clear about something here. There were no consensual relationships between enslaved Africans and their enslavers. None. Not love, not complicated, not mutual. One person owned the other. You cannot consent to someone who can beat you, sell your children, or kill you. That's not romance. That's domination. And here's the part of the story America hides. 40%, almost half of enslaved people were owned by white women. The so-called Southern Belles weren't dainty bystanders. They were active participants, ordering whippings, selling children, exploiting enslaved men, running human trafficking businesses disguised as plantations. Their hands were just as bloody as the men's. The only difference, history washed them clean. Then came 1669. What happened in 1669? Well, Virginia passed a law called the Casual Killing Act. It was designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to protect elite white women who were murdering the mixed-race children fathered by their husbands and enslaved black women. These women, furious that their husbands were raping enslaved women and producing children who looked just like them, took their rage out on the babies. Some of those children were boiled, skinned, beaten, tortured to death. And instead of punishing these white women, the colony passed a law saying, well, if she kills the child, it's fine, as long as we can't prove she meant to do it. That law didn't just protect murder, it sanctified it. It told the world black children are disposable and white tears matter more than black life. From the plantation to the hospital. Fast forward to today. That legacy didn't just disappear. It changed uniforms. That's what they do. Remember the white nurse in Virginia who was intentionally breaking black newborns' limbs? Remember the black woman in active labor who was escorted out by security and had to give birth in a car? Or the mother whose screams went ignored until her baby was born under traumatic conditions? Ask yourself, who calls security? Who denies care? Who stands guard at the hospital door? More often than not, white women in healthcare positions. This is not new. It's inherited behavior wearing scrubs instead of hoop skirts. Now let me tell you about the serial killer connection. And let me give you some numbers that should make you sit up straight. 95% of female serial killers are white women. 40% of female serial killers work in health care. At the same time, black women die giving birth at 3 times the rate of white women. Black babies die at nearly 3 times the rate of white babies. Now tell me, after everything we know about American history, is that a coincidence or a continuation? Because the system that protected the killers in 1669 still protects them in 2025. It's the same disregard, the same dehumanization, the same quiet violence hidden behind a badge of professionalism. And let me be clear. This is not a message to avoid health care. It's a message to take it back. We need more black doctors, more black nurses, more black midwives, doulas, EMTs, administrators. Because nobody is going to protect us like we protect us. I want to give a shout out to every black healthcare professional out here defending our people inside a system that was not built for us. You are saving lives every day. Thank you. And the rest of us, if we want our children to live, to thrive, to be safe, we need to flood the medical field with black excellence. Because the tradition of killing black babies only ends when we end it. WHGE 95.3 FM, Dove and I. All right. Patrice Gibbs. Well, I want to thank Brother Shazak Ahmad for his depth analysis on the correlation between black infant mortality rates and white women serial killers. Had to get that in there. All right. Moving right along. It's something how the elite will expose themselves when they think they're in a room full of like-minded people. How about you? I know I did. I grew up eating Campbell's soup. Yeah, we didn't have a microwave. I think I was 6, 7 years old. I would stand on the stool in the kitchen, open me a can of chicken noodle, and heat it up on the stove. Pour it in the little pot that I was allowed to use. Yeah. Let me get this straight. Campbell's Soup, the company that has built a multi-billion-dollar empire selling affordable food to working families, just fired an executive because he was caught on tape calling their product ish for effing poor people. Not only insulting the food, but insulting the very people who buy it, eat it, and keep the lights on at Campbell's. See, it's one thing when a company quietly disrespects its customers through cheap ingredients or corporate greed. But it is different when an executive says the quiet part out loud. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a slip of tongue. This was a vice president in charge of information security. Dumbass. Openly mocking the customers, mocking his Indian co-workers, admitting to showing up high on the job. Oh yeah, this guy's a piece of work. And then laughing about who he thinks Campbell Food is for. And let's be real. When rich executives talk about poor people, they're not talking about themselves. They're talking about the elderly on fixed income. They're talking about working moms trying to feed their kids. They're talking about black and brown communities that these corporations profit from while disrespecting at the same time. But here's where it gets darker. The man who recorded the audio, Robert Garza, a Campbell Soup cybersecurity analyst, says he reported the behavior internally. And he was the one fired 20 days later. Now he's filing suit for retaliation in a racially hostile work environment. So Campbell fires the executive once the tape goes public. But the whistleblower was shown the door first. Sounds like Campbell's only found his values after the bad press showed up, huh? This is what corporate America does. They preach diversity in commercials while racism rots in the boardroom. They praise whistleblowers publicly, but blacklist them in private. They talk about company culture while protecting the wrong people until a lawsuit forces their hand. Let's be very clear. If Garza hadn't released that tape, Campbell's would still have that executive on payroll, and the public would still be eating soup served with a smile and seasoned with contempt behind the scenes. And yet, Campbell's wants us to believe this is an isolated incident. No, this is a symptom of a larger disease. Corporate leadership that sees working people as expendable, customers as joke, minority employees as a problem. Campbell says they won't tolerate this kind of language. Well, they tolerated it long enough to fire the man who ratted that sucker out. We'll see what comes out in court. But for now, remember this. Every time you see a corporate selling you family values, warm meals, and wholesome goodness, check who's stirring the pot behind the scenes. Because sometimes the real toxicity isn't in the ingredients, it's in the executive suite. It's their culture. All right. Let me tell you how Wall Street is legally stealing the so-called American dream. Let me break this down clear and without sugarcoating it. You're the BlackRock, the $1 trillion behemoth that moves global markets with a yawning stretch. Well, they just bought 50,000 homes at roughly $300,000 each. Then in a move slick enough to make a con artist blush, they sold 3 of those homes to themselves for $700,000. Now, what is that about? Why would a company sell something to itself at more than double the price? It's simple. They're not making money, they're making markets. They're artificially inflating the value of every house in that neighborhood. And because real estate valuations depend on comparable sales, those three fake transactions didn't just change the price of those houses. They changed the price of your house, your block, and your entire city. Your neighborhood's value just doubled overnight. Sounds good, right? Except you can't afford to buy there anymore. Your kids can't afford to live where they grew up. Your property taxes go up. Your rent goes up. Your cost of living goes up. And the only people who can afford the new market value are the people who created the new market value. This isn't economics. This is legalized displacement. And this is gentrification by algorithm. This is corporate capture of shelter, the most basic human necessity. And here's how they legally steal the American dream. They buy in bulk. You can't compete. You're trying to buy a house with a mortgage. They're buying entire zip codes with cash. You get pre-qualified. They get pre-approved by Congress. They manipulate comps. The system was built for them. The value of your home is determined by the price of similar homes recently sold. If they control the sales, they control the value. If they control the value, they control the market. If they control the market, they control you. They price you out, then rent your dream back to you. They don't want you to own. Owners have power. Owners have equity. Owners pass down wealth. Renters build their wealth. So they create the crisis. Then they step in as the solution. They hide behind LLCs and shell companies. So you don't even know who's buying the block. It looks like 100 buyers. It's really one puppet master. And they use politicians like doormen. Every loophole they exploit was written by somebody who cashed a check. The result? A country where a corporation can own your childhood home, your grandmother's home, your entire goddamn community, before your loan officer even calls you back. This is not the American dream. This is the American heist. And until people wake up, truly wake up, Wall Street will keep doing what Wall Street does. Turn your life into their asset. Turn your neighborhood into their portfolio. Turn your struggle into their profit. Because the only thing more valuable to them than a house is a nation full of people who can't afford one. WHGE 95.3 FM, Dover 9. WHGE 95.3 FM, Dover 9. You have to wonder, something I know my man's born, we used to talk about it all the time. Maybe the generation of racists will die out. Heard a lot of us say that. But what are MAGA parents teaching their children? It isn't just ignorance, it's the deliberate passing down of a dying empire's sickness. It's the final stage of a culture that fears its own decline and tries to preserve itself by poisoning the next generation. They're teaching their children that mocking the disabled is cool because a society rooted in domination can only understand humanity through the lens of who can be humiliated. They're teaching their children that you never apologize because apology requires humility, something white supremacy has never learned. They're teaching their children that you never admit you are wrong because their entire worldview collapses the moment truth breaks through the cracks. And they're teaching that name calling is cool. Not because it's powerful, but because it distracts from their lack of substance. They're teaching that science is stupid because science disproves their myths. That empathy is for losers because empathy is the seed of liberation, and liberation terrifies them. They're teaching their children to be afraid of anyone, not white, because the world they built on stolen land and stolen labor is shrinking, and fear is the only inheritance they have left to offer. They're teaching that cheating is acceptable because cheating built their wealth. That bullying people is good because bullying maintains their hierarchy. That stealing from charities is okay because theft is the foundation of this nation's history. Could you say that? The proof is there. Resources stolen from Africa, bodies stolen from Africa, lives stolen from Africa. They're teaching that reading is a waste of time because reading exposes truth. Truth about Africa's greatness, truth about their brutality, truth about the world they don't want their children to understand. They're teaching that attacking the dead is fine because even ancestors who resisted them must be vilified. That distorting the truth is normal because truth threatens power. That you should always blame others, especially black people, because that's the oldest American tradition. And that you should always take credit, even when the credit belongs to Africa, to indigenous people, to the oppressed. You know what this is? This is the curriculum of decline. The doctrine of a fading world, the desperate education of people watching their supremacy slip through their fingers. And here's the contrast. We teach our children truth, not mythology. We teach them pride, not prejudice. We teach them empathy, not fear. We teach them that their ancestors built civilizations while Europe was still in darkness. We teach them that unity, Pan-African unity, is our shield and our future. MAGA teaching their children to cling to a dying order. We're teaching ours to build a new world, a world where Africa is respected, where black humanity is non-negotiable, where the ancestors are honored, and where our children rise, not shrink. Stove and I. Let me do some follow up on that. All right. Let's break something down today that explains a whole lot about the chaos that we're living through. It's called hierarchical inversion. That's when the natural order of competence, wisdom, morality, and responsibility gets flipped upside down. That's when the people least qualified to lead end up in power, while the people best suited to guide are silenced, ignored, or punished. In other words, the fools take the throne and the truth tellers get locked out. We're watching it right now in real time. We got con men playing statesmen, grifters pretending to be patriots, and a whole political class acting like the village idiot should be running the village. Meanwhile, educators, scholars, scientists, organizers, and community elders, the people with actual knowledge, are dismissed as radicals, elites, or threats. That's hierarchical inversion. That's how democracies rot. See, when the bottom rises to the top, not by merit, but by manipulation, the entire structure becomes a house of lies. Mistakes become policy. Ignorance becomes ideology. Cruelty becomes culture. And corruption becomes standard operating procedure. This is why systems fall apart, not because the people at the bottom misbehave, but because the people at the top were never fit to be there in the first place. A society cannot survive when the unqualified are in charge and the competent are criminalized. History tells the story. Rome collapsed behind a hierarchical inversion. European monarchies fell behind hierarchical inversion. Whole civilizations sank because the loudest fools were given crowns while the wisest voices were buried. And in America, we're repeating the cycle with enthusiasm. But here's the thing. Hierarchical inversion doesn't last forever. You can only suppress truth for so long. You can only elevate incompetence for so long. Sooner or later, the imbalance collapses under its own weight, and what was once hidden becomes exposed. Because the system flips upside down, then people eventually flip back. So keep your eyes open. This moment isn't just dysfunctional, it's a warning. A society cannot thrive when the worst are protected and the best are punished. And the longer we tolerate this inversion, the harder the reckoning will be when the truth finally breaks through. Keep your eyes open. Okay? Now, what about these village idiots? These conservatives. Let me tell you something. Conservatives aren't just on the wrong side of history. They're the cysts on the ass of humanity. They're swollen, festering reminders of everything society refuses to heal. They sit there inflamed and irritated, blocking progress, draining the lifeblood of justice, compassion, and collective advancement. They are the painful bulges of bigotry, greed, and willful ignorance that keep bursting open every generation, spilling the same toxic pus into our politics, our classrooms, our communities, and our conversations. They clean the outdated ideals like parasites gripping dying flesh. Fighting against equality, fighting against human rights, fighting against science, fighting against truth. Because deep down, they know they had nothing else. No vision, no innovation, no courage, just grievance, cruelty, and nostalgia for a world where they were the only ones who mattered. Humanity is trying to walk forward, climb higher, evolve. But conservatives keep hanging on the backside like infected remnants of a diseased past, screaming that progress is persecution and justice is oppression. And every time society tries to treat the infection, disinfect the wound, or move toward healing, they howl about being silenced, attacked, or counseled. Even as they are the ones trying to counsel entire communities, entire identities, entire futures. Humanity doesn't need them dragging behind us like dead weight. Humanity needs to lance the abscess of conservative ideology, drain out the hatred, the fear, the racism, and cut the cysts off the ass of humanity. WHGE 95.3 FM. Hey, Tony, I see you there, sister. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs, your third eye optometrist. I'm ready to piss y'all off. Yeah. Some of y'all ain't gonna like this. Hey, let me ask you something. You don't like Jasmine Crockett? She's something else, saying that sister gets something said, don't she? What's that she said about Marjorie Taylor Greene? Bad built, butch body. Yeah. And let me ask you something. When was the last time you heard Representative Jasmine Crockett fight specifically for Black Americans? Yeah, exactly. Because what we're watching right now is one of the greatest political con games running in Black America, and Jasmine Crockett is the poster child for it. I'm not picking on her. I'm describing the system that manufactured her, elevated her, and uses her. She just happens to be the clearest example of what's wrong with Black political leadership in 2025. And let's keep it real. Jasmine Crockett is everywhere. What is it? MSNBC, they call it MS Now. I don't know why. She's there. CNN, red carpet rolled out. Award shows, front row. Campaign rallies, coast to coast. Social media, viral every other week. She has become one of the most visible Black faces in Democratic politics. And every time she speaks, she's pushing the same agenda, Democratic priorities. Blue talking points, party strategy, party messaging. And you know what you don't hear? You don't hear Black specific, Black center, Black prioritized policy. Not the stuff that actually affects our lives. Not the stuff that requires backbone. Not the stuff that makes party leadership uncomfortable. Let me run the receipts. When Jasmine Crockett goes on TV, she'll talk about defending democracy, the threat of MAGA, Trump, abortion rights, climate change, LGBTQ protections. All valid topics. All valid topics. But where's this? Where's the segment on Black maternal mortality? Where's the fight for reparations? Where's the fire on mass incarceration? Where's the demand for federal anti-Black hate crime protections? Where's the push for targeted Black economic development? Where's anything that puts Black America at the center, not the margins, not as part of a coalition, not as a footnote? Where's it? It's missing. Or it shows up as a throwaway line wrapped in broad, safe, inclusive language designed not to upset anybody. And that's the problem. Let me tell you something. Jasmine Crockett has access most Black politicians can only dream of. National media, primetime visibility, a massive social following, political capital in abundance. And she uses it all to be a loyal soldier in the Democratic Party instead of warrior for Black liberation. That's not just missed opportunity, that's active harm. Because every time she uses her Blackness to legitimize a party that gives Black voters 90% of the promises and 0% of the deliverables, every time she tells us the vote blue, no matter who, without demanding anything in exchange, every time she prioritizes party loyalty over community accountability, she becomes a tool of the system that keeps us politically loyal but materially abandoned. This is the psychological operation at work. The Democratic Party knows it has a Black enthusiasm problem, not a Black loyalty problem. We vote blue 85 to 90%, but a turnout problem. So what do? You find a Black face that's charismatic, stylistically Black, culturally fluent, quick-witted, good on TV, good for a viral moment. You elevate them everywhere. You let their Blackness do the work the policy refuses to do. Representation without deliverables. Visibility without any advocacy. Style without substance. A Black face validating a non-Black agenda. And it works. Because yes, representation feels good. We get excited when we see her talking smack. But what good is a voice that doesn't speak for you? What good is a representative who doesn't represent you? What good is a seat at the table if you're never allowed to order from the menu? So here's the real question. What is Jasmine Crockett doing specifically for Black Americans? Not the Democratic Party, not the Progressive Coalition, not the resistance to Trump, not the general public, us. I'll wait. Damn, I'll probably be waiting a long time, huh? Because being a good Democrat is not the same thing as being a good representative for Black people. Voting the party line is not the same thing as fighting for Black interests. Cultural Blackness is not the same thing as political Blackness. And before somebody jumps in and says, well, she has to work within the system, let me stop you right there. Nobody's asking her to go rogue. I'm asking for proportional fire. Be as passionate about reparations as you are about defending Joe Biden. Be as loud about Black maternal mortality as you are about abortion. Be as strategic about building Black political power as you are about building your own brand. Because she won't. She's not. Because doing so isn't rewarded in the Democratic Party. It's punished. It costs invitations, airtime, access, favor, and future promotions. So she does what's safe, was smart for her career, was comfortable for party leadership. And she gives us the performance of representation instead of the reality of advocacy. And like I said, I'm not picking on her because she's not alone. She's just the most polished example of a class of Black politicians who have mastered the economics of symbolic Blackness while abandoning the responsibility of substantive Black policy work. The Congressional Black Caucus, they're a Democratic auxiliary at this point, not a Black-centered institution. They only move when party leadership allows them. They fight only when it's convenient. They prioritize coalition optics over Black deliverables. And that's why we stay stuck. Not because we lack leaders, but because we have leaders who choose visibility over vision, career over community, symbolism over substance. Black America doesn't need more performers. We need advocates. We need fighters. We need truth tellers. We need people who will break with the party for us the same way they defend the party to us. Until then, we remain politically loyal, are receiving nothing that loyalty should purchase. And we do that because the opposition is so effed up. We're tired of being between a rock and a hard place, between the lesser of two evils. Yeah, I know some people don't like that. And I'm here to tell the truth, the kind that makes the powerful uncomfortable. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right. Time flies when you're having fun. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right, all right. Let me tell you about the Great Republican Escape Act. Let's talk about those congressional Republicans suddenly sprinting for the exits like the building is on fire. The hell's going on? Oh, yeah, you remember Marjorie Taylor Greene quit? Now reporters say dozens more are thinking about bailing before 2026. You know, I'm talking about 40 members of Congress. And you know what? These people make $174,000 a year. Plus benefits, the average American can only dream of. And they get insider trading loopholes. They get corporate donors throwing checks like rice at a wedding. So why would they walk away from a job that pays them handsomely to barely do anything? Let's be clear, it's not the salary. It's not the workload. It's not the principles. That's not why they're going. It's the death threats. Threats against lawmakers, Republican and Democrat, have exploded. And after the death of white nationalist carnival barker Charlie Kirk, the energy inside the MAGA base has turned even more volatile. The same monster these Republicans helped create has now turned on them. They thought loyalty to Trump was a shield. Now they're realizing it's a collar. For years, they bowed straight, they demeaned themselves at the altar of the orange disaster, selling out their dignity, their country for a seat at his table. Now that table has never been stable. It's a roulette wheel run by a man who demands fealty, offers nothing but chaos, and unleashes his supporters on anyone who dares cross him, including the very Republicans who put him back in office. Now Republican members are whining that the Trump White House treats them like garbage. Nah, you volunteer for the dumpster. Sure as hell did. You wanted chaos. You embraced the cruelty. You celebrated the threats when they were used against Democrats, against journalists, and especially against black people, against judges, prosecutors, and everyday citizens. But now the threat machine is pointed at you, and suddenly you want to run home. Suddenly you want to spend more time with your family. Suddenly you lost faith in leadership, full of it. Let's call it what it is. You Republicans are realizing Trump's America is unsafe for them. And here's the part they don't want to say out loud. The cost of loyalty to Trump is higher than they're willing to pay. The party is eating itself alive. And these resignations are the smoke signals. But here's my suggestion to every quitting Republican member of Congress. Straight from the heart. Do your goddamn job. You took an oath. You were hired the governor, not just cash a paycheck while licking the boots of a corrupt wannabe dictator and his band of incompetent white supremacist grifters. You weren't elected to be a cult member, a chaos amplifier, or a corporate envoy for billionaires hell-bent on locking the rest of us into economic servitude. Yeah, that's right, Sherry. The kitchen got too hot for them. If you're scared now, good. Because fear forces clarity. And the clarity is simple. You help build this monster. You help feed it, and you helped unleash it. And now that it's chewing on your arm, you want to quit. Oh, no. Stand in the mess you made. Clean it up. And maybe, just maybe, you'll salvage a shred of integrity on your way out if you ever had any. Because the people, the real people you claim to represent, deserve more than a legislative body full of cowards running from the consequences of their own creation. And that's what you're doing. That's right. Now, let me tell you something. Okay, coming around to the close here. Let's talk plainly, because this woman is not subtle. It's not complicated. It's not accidental. When the bait doesn't work, check this out. Authoritarians take the next step. They light the fuse themselves. And that is exactly what we're watching play out in real time. This is from Miles Taylor's warning. Miles Taylor was an insider, not an outsider. He was an insider to the chaos unfolding across this country. The pattern is too blatant to ignore. First, they tried to provoke the left. They tried to provoke black folk. They deployed troops into American cities hoping somebody would snap, somebody would react, somebody would provide the footage they could loot for 24 hours as justification for the crackdown they already planned. But the nation didn't take the bait. People kept marching peacefully. Black people stayed their ass home. Communities kept their discipline. Folks refused to be props in Trump's authoritarian theater. So what happens next? They escalate, they manufacture, they ignite. Let's take a look at the sequence. Carnival Barker, white supremacist, Charlie Kirk is killed. And before the facts are even cold, MAGA races to blame black people, leftists, and Antifa, anybody but one of their own. But when the truth emerges, the killer turns out to be a right-wing extremist, one of their foot soldiers. But HBCUs across the country receive death threats and bomb threats, creating fear, chaos, and suspicion. Perfect soil for authoritarian narratives. And now, 2 National Guard members shot, 1 dead in the latest report. And the shooter isn't a leftist, not Antifa, not Black Lives Matter. It's a CIA-vetted Afghan refugee who was given asylum under Trump's own administration. And let's be real. For Trump and his minions, that contradiction doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. Reality doesn't matter. All they need is the image of violence, the headline of chaos, the emotion of fear. Because fear is the tool. Chaos is the method, and crackdowns are the goal. So ask yourself, is this the pretext they've been waiting for to ramp up the invasion of American cities? To unleash federal power on civilian populations? To declare national emergency conditions only dictators can dream of? And while America is glued to its screens, watching deployed troops and panic-stricken communities, what gets buried? What gets buried? What fades into the shadows? What conveniently disappears from the front page? Them Epstein files. The ones tying some of the world's most powerful men to crimes they'd rather burn down the country than answer for. The ones Trump would love nothing more than to shove behind a wall of tanks and emergency orders. Because if there's one thing we know about the orange disaster, it's this. Whenever you see a fire, he either lit it or he's trying to drag your eyes away from something already burning. Miles Taylor told us the playbook: create the crisis, blame the enemy, use chaos to justify the crackdown. And now the pattern is unmistakable. When the bait didn't work, they stopped waiting. They grabbed the match, they struck it, and they're trying to set America ablaze to cover their tracks. The question now is not whether Trump is staging this. The question is, how far is he willing to go? How long would a country ignore the smoke or before the whole house catches on fire? Wake up. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. All right. Yes, D. Hey, Rem Slaughter, I see you there. All right. I'm coming around to the close, but before we close, let me leave you with this. We're living in a moment where truth is being twisted, history is being rewritten, and basic humanity is being traded like stock options. Everywhere you turn, somebody's running a hustle. Political hustles, economic hustles, cultural hustles. And the biggest con of them all is the one that tries to convince you that you're powerless. And let me tell you something, powerless people don't inspire fear. And the way this system reacts to us, to our intelligence, our organizing, our voting power, our culture, our ability to survive every storm they throw, tells you everything you need to know. They are terrified of a people who can't be bought, can't be broken, can't be blinded. So let the noise distract you. Don't let the headlines exhaust you. Don't let the con games confuse you. Keep your third eye open. Keep your spirit sharp. Keep your mind steady. Because every time black folks wake up a little more, the world shakes a little harder. And remember this. We are not here to fit into anyone's narrative. We are here to write our own. We are not here to repeat history. We're here to correct it. We are not here to bow. We are here to build. That's why you listen to the open eye. Because we don't just look at the world, we see through it. I hope you learned something today, because I learned something before I got here. Yeah, I did. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This is The Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Thanks for joining us. All right. Thanks for joining us. As I always tell you, it's coming. Global African supremacy. Because the world is a much better place when the African rule.